In my time as a detective, I suppose you could say, in learning a number of things to get to the bottom of very multifaceted and complex problems, thus being geared towards complex problem solving, especially when the problems are stemming from underlying family dynamics, for example. In so doing, this has made me public enemy number one in a number of of situations, and this is not uncommon by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, it would be more uncommon for that not to happen. Because when you're dealing with any kind of underlying family dynamic, and it could be a literal family, or it can be or the family can be symbolic. It can be a group family, a group situation, an institution, a work setting, whatever the case may be. When you have someone within that system who has co-opted its machinations, in a sense, because this person is innately narcissistic. And narcissism is a very misleading term. Essentially what narcissism is it's an arrested developmental state. All right? It's one of the best explanations I've heard for this so far is that everybody is born with this kind of narcissism, until they're about toddlers, but then they start developing the more complex systems of their personality. And thus the narcissism matures and develops a number of other integral regulating systems and, becomes something else entirely for the most part. And then, of course, you have what's known as healthy narcissism, but comparing this to narcissism is comparing apples to arsenic. It's just not the same. But yeah, when you have a narcissistic person essentially not having the more complex personality structures and emotional development, it's like having a vehicle that's got 5 gears, but it only goes from 1 to 5. There is no 2, second, third, or fourth gear. It's just 1 to 5. And that can be troublesome. And the narcissist has learned over its life to blend in and maximize its narcissistic racketeering operation, as I like to call it. Because it is an interpersonal racket. It's innately conspiratorial. What is narcissism, if not a conspiracy of motivations, intentions, and outcomes? It's innately abusive. And a narcissist, an abusive person can't not be abusive. They can't not be abusive. Not without some kind of very functional professional intervention, which is almost certain to not happen, because this is one of the many shielding systems within the narcissistic personality structure, if you will, is to block out anything and everything that can identify them or what they're doing as the cause of the problems, often that they're complaining about, time and time again. I recently heard someone say, what does it actually mean to be crazy? Because this term gets thrown around so much. And he made a very good point, which was, I think crazy means an inability to accept the fuller spectrum of reality. Narcissists typically don't have a tough time with compartmentalized facets of reality, but the rest of it, that just goes by the wayside. Perhaps because that is actually incomprehensible to them. And one of the things they're driven by is a pathological envy, and it's so strange. And it can be, the first time I heard this, I was like, well, envious of what? Sometimes it can be the most absurd things that just don't make any sense. The way you stand or walk or say hello, for that matter. I mean, it can be really, or the fact that you have a more complex and comprehensive personality system. And so the narcissist, in an effort to self-regulate, needs to break this down over time. Now, this is not at all what things look like going into the narcissistic ensnarement. Good heavens, no. At first, they are doing what I like to call data mining, and they are putting you at ease in every way that they can, so you develop an artificial trust bond with them, and therefore feel very comfortable in giving up all kinds of information about yourself. And the narcissist then begins using this over time as a way to break you down. So the narcissist can control you coercively and dominate you from the inside out. And as one can imagine, any number of cumulatively catastrophic problems come about from this. And there is no reasoning with the narcissist. It doesn't matter what you say or how you say it. The narcissist will revert to gaslighting, victim blaming, smear campaigns. They will rally family or friends to their cause because, contrary to popular belief, narcissists are actually profoundly sensitive, more so than most. The problem is that the only thing they care about is their own feelings. They're simply incapable of caring about another person in this capacity by any stretch of the imagination. But they are very invested in pretending like it, and they know how to do so exceedingly well. This is one of the things that's chalked up to the genius factor of narcissism, but it's not something that's innately genius about them. This is their unconscious mind, hard at work. And the unconscious mind is a quantum supercomputer. And it can be very dangerous in the hands of a narcissist, exceedingly. I can't imagine how many people who have been victims of narcissistic abuse have been ensnared, and then adding insult to injury, they've been demonized and villainized as the very villain of the abuse that they were undergoing, to the point of destruction, self-destruction maybe. That was maybe the only way they could get out in the end, because there is no end to narcissistic abuse. It's wholesale devastation and destruction to your sense of self, your internal resources, and thus your ability to take care of yourself with external resources. And part and parcel of this is so the narcissist has more control over you. And the narcissist will conversely complain about this as well, but this is more just to denigrate and shame you. Many of them are aware of what they're doing. They just don't seem to see any problem with it. You can tell they know that it's unacceptable because they put on a very different mask when there's witnesses. They're very charming. Very, very charming. It's very misleading, very misdirecting. I like to call this, playfully refer to this as zombie black magic. We've got a video about that if anybody would like to check that out. So, narcissists are profoundly dangerous, especially when it's family, a parent, or both, for that matter. And especially if other family members are enablers of the narcissist's abuse, which is more than not the case. This makes it very difficult for the victim to retain a sense of stability within long enough to be able to rebuild their external resources enough to get out. And any attempts that they make to do so always have to be done out of sight and out of mind of the narcissist, because if the narcissist sees anything that the victim is doing which provokes any feeling of lacking control over the victim, or as if the victim is somehow skilled at something that the narcissist is not, well, the narcissist cannot abide by this, and the narcissist becomes very distressed by this. And as a need to self-regulate, they have to denigrate and coercively erode and diminish the victim more to put an end to any of that. I like to refer to this as the Sarlacc pit, especially when it's a living situation, which is more than often the case. And the Sarlacc pit being the Pit of Carcoon, I believe is what it's called in Star Wars. And Return of the Jedi, when C-3PO says,
"In its belly, you will learn a new definition of pain and suffering when you are slowly digested over 1,000 years."
Yeah. It's not too unlike that. And everything you come up with to escape the Sarlacc pit, well, its tendrils just seem to eventually pick up on that and tie you back down. And it gets to the point where it might take a miracle more than anything else to escape, if anything, by then. So, this is, I like to kind of do a narc roast thing here on the channel as a way of, I suppose coping with these things, but it is no laughing matter at the same time, because it is comprehensively and cumulatively catastrophic to experience. Thanks for tuning in.